Hello, fourth graders. Happy Monday. Here we are with your English reading, writing, and expedition task for today. So follow along with this video and I will guide you through what you need to do for your story today. So first, our learning target, what we're going to be working on, is I can write the resolution of my story, including the theme or message of resistance and resilience. So just like this mountain, our story's been building up, starting from the exposition through the rising action to the climax, the peak exciting moment of our story, coming down through the falling action, and now we're ending in our resolution where our problems are solved and all the action comes to an end. Something we're really going to focus on too, like this time period, like we've been talking about, is such a brutal, hard time period we've been studying. So, even I know you all have been wrestling with this as you write your own stories, even if it's hard for your story to come to a really nice close, like a happy resolution, we can still include these tools of resistance. We can include this message of the way people fought back and were resilient and survived even when they were facing such harsh conditions. So think back to those Padlets you've looked at about land, religion, music, movement, fashion, storytelling, language, and food, and all those ways that people showed resistance and persevered throughout history, even when they're facing incredible odds. So, what we're going to do right now is we're going to read the very end of Eliza's Freedom Road and watch as this story comes to a resolution. It comes to an end, and how they include this message of resistance and perseverance. So, let's get to our story. All right. So they've been traveling through the Underground Railroad, going to all these safe houses, trying to escape to freedom. And now they are so close. Right now they're at the Niagara Falls, straddling the border between Canada and the United States. Tuesday, July 10th, 1855, on the road to St. Catharines. Everything looks brighter with almost free eyes. But what I've seen today is hard to describe and most hard to say into words. We came to a place where we heard a most mighty rush of thundering water. The ground under our feet trembled and shook. At first, I thought there was going to be another earthquake, but it was raining and everything was covered in a spray from hurrying waters. It was not rain that fell from the sky, but water that poured down from the river's level into the break below. These falling waters were called Niagara Falls. I stood looking at the almighty waters and thought of Moses and how God parted the seas for the Hebrew people. And I remembered my prayer that we shall be delivered into the promised land. This gave me a great feeling, thinking that now my prayers were answered in these falling waters. We stopped our journey to view the majesty of the waters, lighted up and dazzling in the sun. The sky filled up with rainbows. It was strange that I felt so calm and peaceful inside, yet all around me, roaring, rolling, leaping, roaring, tumbling waters. And before nightfall, we crossed the river by ferry into Canada. So here you can see when she's talking about Moses and God, this character, Eliza, uses religion as a way to persevere and to resist these really challenging situations and circumstances she's in. Let's keep reading. A new journey begins in Ontario. Wednesday, July 11th, 1855, St. Catharines, Canada. Crossing out of Uncle Sam's land, Mistress Conductor said, "Well, children, now you are free." A feeling came over us all just as the rushing waters hit the river. Upon hearing those words, Jesse picked up his boy David and hugged him through tears. Abraham fell to his knees. Squire grabbed Sally by her waist and swung her around, and the words echoed in my heart like a dream. When we arrived, friends of the conductor met us. We were taken to a church building to rest, and in the morning, we were we are to be taken to a boarding house where we will live until permanent quarters are found. The men of our group go the men of our group go to the men's boarding house next door. Behind the house is a great field of green grass. It was a sight to see former slaves as free people, walking with confidence out in the open air. And there were white people too, who do not threaten or cause fear, but live side by side with former slaves. And not one or the other was mistreated, whipped, or forced to work. What would my old master and mistress think if they were to see this? Our conductor is a great woman. Wherever she goes, she is held up for all her great goodness. I see what she does, and I'm sure she's driven by a power from the Almighty herself. Here again, she's showing how she uses religion to resist and persevere. Twice a year, she journeys south in Uncle Sam's country to bring people out of bondage. She is fearless. I do not think I could ever be as fearless as that to return. And there is the station master. It is he who arranged for our safe and speedy journey by train, and all of the friends along the way. These are good ways to show how to live free. But what will be my freedom way? Today, I think again of my old mistress and of only sadness for her, and for missing Abby, and for my mother, Jane May. Then my thoughts turn to Sir, but the worry thought seems so far away from me now. I remember my last day in Virginia. It comes to me like the falling waters of Niagara. I remember the day Sir stood before me and I did something a slave should never do. I looked at Sir right in his hard gray eyes. All along this freedom way, I have worried and wondered on this, but now I understand it is clear to me. The reason I saw Sir's eyes is that just as I had grown taller than Abby, I'd also grown to be as tall as Sir. Even while he wore his big boots, now almost a year has passed and I'm probably taller still. I remember a story my mother would tell when Sir was his meanest, but when she told it, the story made her laugh so much. Now I see the joke was on Sir after all, and I write it here to remember it. Here she's showing storytelling as well, how she used storytelling as a form of resistance. And I know that I read this in a previous post, but let's read it too and see what we can learn this time. The knee-high man lived deep in the swamp. All he wanted in the world that he knew was to be bigger than he was. Sometimes he'd look up to the sky and see the moon from a sliver of light to a round glowing ball. If the moon can grow bigger, how can I? Knee-high man began to give this more and more thought every day. One day he saw a Bree horse romping around his fields. I wish I was as big as Horse, he thought. Knee-high man decided to ask Horse how he could become bigger like him. And Bree Horse told him, I eat corn all day. I run around. Knee-high man decided to try that, but it did not grow bigger. He got a big stomach ache and had to rub his leg with liniment oil. Next, he saw Bree Bull. He asked Bree Bull how he could make himself as strong as he was. Bree Bull told him what to do. But Knee-high man did not like the taste of grass. He bellowed so loud his throat got sore, and he snorted so much his nostrils burned. And the Knee-high man was not any bigger. After a while, he heard old Mr. Hoot Owl in the swamp. Mr. Hoot Owl had big round eyes. Everyone thought he looked wise. Knee-high man climbed up into Mr. Hoot Owl's tree to see if the owl could help him figure out how to grow bigger in size. Why do you want to get bigger in the first place? You are made the way you are. But what about when I get into a fight? Would you want me to win it? But has anyone ever picked a fight with you? Well, no, not early and not lately. Well, you do not have any reason to be bigger than you are, For fighting purposes. No, not if you put it like that, Nehi Man thought some more. But I want to be able to see a long way. Just then, there was a great noise on the other side of the swamp. Nehi Man's head jerked in the direction of the noise. Bree Bear had caught 3 fish at once. Did you see that? Nehi Man said to Mr. Hoot Owl. You sure can see a long way off, but that's from up in this tree, and your size makes it easy for you to climb a tree. You know, you do not have any real reason to be bigger in your body, but you sure do have a lot of reasons to grow bigger in your brain. This gave me a hearty laugh. I looked at my quilt and thought of the love my dear mother Jane May has for me and the wisdom of the stories she told me. Monday, July 16th, 1855, St. Catharines, Canada. This morning, I woke up with a feeling that joy was all around me because of the most wonderful dream I had. In the dream, a line was drawn on the ground. I was standing on one side of the line. On the other side was a beautiful log cabin sitting out in a field of green grass. Flowers were bunched up all over the land. Singing surrounded me too. Bells rang out. Near the cabin was a beautiful lady. I was sure it was my mother, though I could see her, though I could not see her clearly enough. But the lady stretched her hand out to me. I thought, how can I reach her? And I knew I must. I tried and I fell. I stood and moved toward her. Then she spread out a beautiful hand-stitched quilt on the grassy green ground. I tried again to reach her, and I fell again. But this time I landed right in the middle of the quilt, while the singing wind blew oops, move, all around me. And that is when I awoke. By the time I got dressed, Jesse, Squire, and Abraham had already risen and were in search of work. Sally, Nancy, the Littles, and I walked back to the boarding house from our morning search. Good news for Nancy. She has found housing and a position. Sally and Nancy talked happily along the way, but I did not join the talk. We carry our bundles with us, as today could be the lucky day that we also find permanent position work. When we got back to the boarding house, I saw someone at the other end of the street that looked familiar. It was a beautiful lady, like the lady in my dream. I wanted to speak to her. I looked carefully at the woman. This woman was tall, but not so tall. She was lean, but not so lean. Yet she looked like someone I knew. The woman began waving in my direction. Could she be waving at me? I wondered. Then this woman started to walk toward me. The closer she got to me, the faster she walked. I tucked my quilt bundle under my arm and started walking quickly toward her. Then she started running, and I did too. The woman did something that made me stop. She said my name aloud, Eliza. I could see by the look of her eyes. I could see by the smooth color of her skin and by her beautiful face. This was not a dream. This was real. This was my dream come true. The woman opened her arms wide and flung them around me. My eyes flooded with tears. Everything was a blur, and only then, when I felt her soft arms surround me, I knew who she was. I felt her love. I looked down at my quilt bundle and could see that my little compass arrow was steadily pointed north, directly at her. It fixed in my mind what I knew. This was my mother, Jane May. I knew I would find you, my mother, Jane May said. I never gave up hope. Saturday, July 21st, 1855, St. Catharines, Canada. In the boarding house, there are many children. I will begin my new life in freedom, teaching others how to read and write. I will do as my former mistress did for me. I am sharing my gift, and it makes me glad. But it will be a gift to share in the broad light of day, not a secret. First, I will teach them the shapes and sounds of letters. Then I will teach them to arrange the letters into words. I will show them ways to remember their lessons very easily. Then I will show them how to read the groups of words, and I will remind them each day of the kind regard I have for them to learn. This is your inheritance, I will tell them. This is your insurance for your freedom. This is the way you live free. As old Joe said, Eliza, you can read and write. That makes you bigger than even the man who tries to keep you a slave. Sunday, July 22nd, 1855. There's one page left in my writing book. Here I must remember how I spent my first true day in freedom. I found a patch of sweet green grass. I spread out my quilt just as the beautiful lady did in my dream days ago. When I spread it out, I saw all the story pictures and I saw the empty places, and I remembered that I must finish it now. And I know how I'm going to finish my quilt. The 11th panel will be stitched with roads that twist and turn and lead to the blue satin cloth of the great waterfalls of Niagara. This panel will show the story of my journey. And the last panel, I will stitch a picture of my book. This panel will tell the whole story. And that's the end. So notice how her story comes to an end. She finally meets her mother. She gets to freedom. She weaves in all these messages, these themes of how she persevered, how she survived through her religion, through storytelling, through this quilt that her mom gave her. So I want you now to think back to your story. I know your characters are also have huge challenges that they're facing. So how can your characters persevere? How do your characters resist? And how can you bring your story to a close? So if you go to Firefly past the video for today, you'll see all the Padlets that you've been looking at in Spanish class. So you could take a peek in any of these Padlets to help you think of ideas of how your character could persevere and resist. Is it through being connected to the land? Is it through food that's important to them? Is it through their religion, through a connection to their language, storytelling, through music and movement and fashion? So feel free, take some time to look through some of these Padlets, and there's a bunch of ideas in here that maybe can get you thinking, because it shows how other people have used things like storytelling throughout history to help them persevere and help them to resist. So use this to help you think about ideas for your story. And then when you're ready, you'll go back to your historical fiction draft document and finish up your story. Go back, put in several paragraphs into this resolution section, and wrap up your story. Have your story come to an end. I know that some of you are in different places. You might still be at your climax. You might still be at your falling action, and that's okay. Keep writing. Pick up where you left off. If you're at your resolution, that's great. But if you're not there yet, that's okay too. Try to get as far as you can today. You're going to do a great job. We'll keep working on this the next day you have English. So go ahead, when you close this video, look at the Padlets and then continue writing in your historical fiction draft document. You got this, everybody. Keep up the great work.